Hello lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, welcome back to another video. Though never truly gone from the industry as a whole, full motion video cutscenes, or FMVs for short, are something I would consider to be a bit of a lost art overall. It's not to say there aren't games that still do it well. Look at Alan Wake 2, that has probably one of the greatest FMV sequences of all time. But back in the 90s especially, we had some of the absolute best of the best in the worst possible way. A game series that had some of my absolute favourites is a little known series known as MegaRace. With the first game in the trilogy releasing back in 1993, with the subsequent games coming out in 1996 and 2002, all three were developed by Cryo Interactive out of Paris. If you gamed in the 90s to early 2000s, there's a chance you may have played something they were involved in. Not because they were a prolific developer, but because they did publish quite a few games. From Game Boy Color, Windows, Linux, even up to the 6th generation of consoles, they had a hand in publishing and developing over 50 different game titles. However, sadly, as of 2002, Cryo itself is defunct and is now owned by a company known as Microids, who are another developer you may or may not know. So as we've done in the past, today we're going to tackle a trilogy and ask,
are you ready for a marvel of virtual reality?
As we dive into MegaRace. Although thematically all the same, all three games are rather different in their overall gameplay and presentation, so there will be a little bit of comparing them as we move forward, especially the first two as they are both MS-DOS releases, whereas by the time the third game came out, it was released for Windows XP and PS2. The first game in the series, like any other, has the task of setting up the world and what we're about to partake in, and my god, do they absolutely nail it. Starting off with a rather lengthy yet impressive cutscene for the time, the mix of CGI and full motion video was done pretty damn well, and it doesn't hurt that we get introduced to the single greatest TV host in gaming, as far as I'm concerned, Lance Boyle.
Can you keep up this level of intensity, tough guy?
Lance is portrayed by the American actor known as Christian Eriksen, who is this somehow weird amalgamation of seedy, creepy, funny, and endearing, but yet somehow an outright lunatic, and I just love him. The acting on display here, although campy as hell, reminds me of Total Recall with a mix of The Running Man, and I'm here for it. I can honestly not tell you the last time a game had me laughing as much as what this game did. And I think Christian Eriksen deserves more love for his hard work. We learn about the plot for the first game from its opening cutscene, where Virtual World Broadcast Television, or WBT for short, is hosting a Hunger Games-like competition where contestants known as enforcers are forced to race in quote live or die, more on that in a second, races against speed gangs. There isn't some overarching story here, and at its core it is just a score attack game. So it's, as I like to say, a game for a game's sake. The core gameplay consists of you picking out your car and attempting to either beat your opponents or destroy them with your weapons. Because this game isn't awesome enough, having vehicle combat makes this game turn it up to 11.
These go to 11.
Now, although you think you would destroy your opponents, you're actually only beating them in virtual reality, thus what I was talking about before. And the reason this works really well is solely because it allows for you to reverse these enemies over and over again, allowing for the game to have more content, because as a DOS game, it's not going to be particularly large. Hell, the video files for this are probably going to be larger than that of the actual game itself. And that's kind of the sad thing about MegaRace, is it's not a very expansive game. Sure, the different tracks look nice, and I think the game actually looks great for 1993. However, the game doesn't really evolve a hell of a lot. Mechanically, it's pretty much the same from race 1 to the end. It's not bad, but I think that is a fair complaint if you were to make it. So if you did want to play it, I think it's important to note that the game is designed like an arcade experience. It is not a 20-30 hour experience, it's a 20-30 minute experience. It is a great time and an absolute blast, but do not expect it to be some hardcore vehicle combat simulator.
Hey, way to go, Enforcer! That slime ball is toasted pulp as we speak. Of course he only got splatted virtually. But even so, how many times can anybody's neurons take that kind of partying? I got the statistics right here, only I'm not allowed to tell.
Moving into MegaRace 2, you'll notice it's basically the same game as the first one, however with a few extra elements to help spice things up. Before getting into that though, you will notice the visual upgrade from 1 to 2, and it's pretty damn impressive. With only a few years between the releases, it shows how quick video games were starting to come along with their graphical improvements. Gameplay wise, the second game is as close to a perfect sequel as you could have hoped for when it comes to the evolution of the series. Not only now do we buy our car and upgrade it as we go, we also have the ability ability to have multiple front-firing weapons along with rear-firing weapons such as mines and oil slicks, basically quadrupling the amount of combat options we had from the first game. Sure, the options themselves might seem a little generic, but for what the game is, I have no real complaints. The next major thing is the races themselves. They have changed how they work. Although the ways to win still remain the same, instead of just being one enemy at a time like we do in the first game, we actually end up with a straight up full grid of races, making it feel more like a racing game rather than just a 1v1 arcade shooter. Now, before we go any further, I know there's a question you're wanting to ask. What about Lance? Is our boy back for a second game?
Feeling all big and nasty, Tiger?
Yes, and he's just as good if not better than he was in the first. More lines, more screen time, and now he has an assistant, Lucinda, who is played by the actress Alice Evans, whom you may know from a few episodes of The Vampire Diaries and Lost. She does a really good job of playing the ditzy sidekick character to Ericsson's witty Lance. MegaRace 2 takes a much more satirical look at a dystopian future than that of the first. It's not to say the first doesn't do this, but the second game really wears it on its sleeve.
These venues are so beautiful, you'll want to live there. Just like me. Only you're not allowed to for financial reasons. Whoever reaches and wins the last track of all is crowned King Mega Racer 2. He experiences a sense of achievement and returns in regal triumph to reality, where he'll probably never readapt.
But he'll have his memories, Lance, long after we've forgotten him.
And if I had to level a complaint at MegaRace 2, I think it's the fact that it reuses the exact same plot from the first game. It's not to necessarily say it's bad, because you are allowed to world build here. However, I think the fact that it doesn't evolve makes it feel a little bit stale. Like in Mario, how many times you gotta save the princess before you're like, I'm kinda tired of this.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad!
Moving into MegaRace 3, you'll notice things have gotten even more futuristic and crazy than what we had before. Not that things didn't already seem to be, but the third game really pushes the boundaries of what the series could become. Gameplay wise, the third game is closer to the second than it is the first, but it definitely plays like a more traditional racing game, more so than a vehicle combat game. The vehicles allow you to toggle between 3 different modes, that being the attack, defense, and speed mode. Personally, I never use the attack mode because I could never line up my shots. However, if you're good enough to do it, you might find a use for it. The overall control in the third game is better in my opinion, but that might just be a preference of a 3D racer versus a 2D racer, considering this is the only 3D game in the series. The game's visual style has definitely changed, and I wouldn't say it's better for it overall. It's not what I would consider to be the prettiest looking game, and although some things can look alright, such as the car models, some of those backgrounds are a little too low res for their own good. Furthermore, you'll notice the king himself, Lance Boyle, has become a lot more antagonistic than what he's ever been.
It's gonna get messy out there, big guy. When we say no survivors, we mean you!
He's still enjoyable as a character, but he's definitely taken a step back. And I wouldn't say this is the fault of Christian Eriksen, I actually think this is the fault of the director and the writing itself. MegaRace 3 just sort of falls a bit flat, and it's probably due to the fact that Cryo was on its last legs when this game came out. So I think they did the best with what they had, however it does diminish the legacy of the first 2 games. MegaRace was never a AAA series, nor do I think it really got the love I think it truly deserves. But considering you can thankfully get your hands on the entire series of MegaRace games over on GOG for less than $5 on sale, hell, you can even get it on Steam, it's an experience worth having, especially the first 2. It's not to say that the third game is bad, but I do think the change in direction that it took definitely hurt it from feeling like a true third title in the series. I also think it's worth noting they did try to reboot the series back in 2015, but it didn't really go anywhere. So fingers crossed, maybe in the future we get something. However, without Lance Boyle, I don't really want it. So with that, lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, it brings us to the end of another video. I hope you enjoyed this look back at the MegaRace Trilogy. I know it wasn't the most in-depth look into each game, but considering they don't really evolve a hell of a lot, it is what it is. If you have a favorite FMV sequence in gaming, let me know, because to me, the true
Marvel of virtual reality.
are the sequences in the Yakuza series. I'm down bad. What are you going to do about it? If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that like button. If you want to go that extra step, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go that extra mile, you can support me on Ko-fi for just $1 a month, like these lovely people here. And with all that said, I hope to see you guys in the next one. Stay safe out there. Bye.